Good evening, everybody. I'm Terry Ryder, founder of Hotspotting. Welcome to tonight's special webinar event in which Brad Cassidy and Dylan Peters from the Kaizen Way will be speaking to us about the very great potential that exists in undertaking small developments like subdivisions. Now, it's true to say that many Australians grow their wealth through passive investment in real estate, buy a property, install a tenant, wait for growth. The proposition we're presenting this evening is that there's a better and faster way to achieve wealth in real estate without taking big risks. More and more investors are using development strategies to accelerate the wealth creation process, with small subdivisions one of the most accessible and successful. Wealth mentor Brad Cassidy of the Kaizen Way teaches these strategies to investors across Australia with notable results, and we're privileged to have him here with us this evening. Brad and Dylan, welcome.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really looking forward to this one in particular because despite my 40 years of experience buying real estate and being an investor, I've never actually done any small developing myself. So I've got as much to learn as the rest of the audience tonight. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have to offer tonight.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm just going to share my screen. If you could just put in the chat and let me know if you could see this. Where's my chat? Here's my chat.
Yep.
Let me know if you could see.
We can see the welcome to the
Awesome. Cam, how you doing? Good to see you again. So, guys, what I want to do, and thank you, Terry, for that introduction, and I'll get straight into it because we've got quite a lot to go through tonight, and it's fair to say, you know, we're not going to be able to cover absolutely everything in 60 minutes together. My outcome for you is to give you enough so that you can understand the potential, the opportunity, some of the biggest things to be mindful of. I've got a lot of experience in subdivisions, and it hasn't all been pretty. My first subdivision, I lost money, okay? Now, I'm not here to say, you know, I want you to lose money, but I'm going to share with you some of the big things that I experienced when I didn't know what I was doing, had no idea. And that's why tonight, I hope that you get some idea of how to look for them, what to watch out for, so that if this is something you want to pursue, you're gonna avoid the big costly mistakes that I made. Is that cool? So just quick check-in. Who's done a subdivision before? If you have, just put me in the chat. I just want to see if you've done a subdivision before. Put me in the chat. I just want to get a gauge of who I'm speaking to here. I know there's going to be a wide variety of audience. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. If you haven't done a subdivision, can you just let me know in the chat, not yet, if that's you, if you just want to, if you're sort of not yet, but you might be considering doing a subdivision. Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Mark. Okay, great. Appreciate it. Thank you, Gillian. I really appreciate it, guys. So let me now share with you how we can make the most of this 60 minutes together, okay? So I honor your time. So here's what I want to give to you tonight. First things first is I want to just quickly go over what subdivisions are, especially when there's around the country. So I develop around the country and my students and members develop around the country, and there can be some slight differentiation in terminology. So I'm going to really define what we mean by subdivision tonight and why this could be something you could consider in order for you to accelerate or unlock opportunity that you might already have, okay? I want to share with you the biggest danger to watch out for in subdivisions. Now, you need to know about this before buying any site, which I'll show you. And something that I really want you to be mindful of is that be very careful when you see advertisements out there saying STCA, which is subject to council approval, or this can be subdivided, make big profits. I'm going to share with you a little bit about my first subdivision in a moment and my mistakes, because if you fall into that trap of, okay, I can do a subdivision, and write this down, just because I can doesn't mean I should. Okay, really important point there, guys. So I'm going to share with you the biggest dangers to watch out for in subdivisions. I want to show you our proprietary process on how to actually find these. Right now, this is very important. One of the biggest things that I've found, I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, I've only really been doing it properly for the last 14 years. The first 6 years, I completely stuffed up and I just I lost a lot of money, right? But in the last 14 years, I've been doing it with strategy, with intent, with proper research, with the right tools, with the right knowledge and the right processes. And that's how I've designed all these things. But in the last 10 years, I've been coaching and training people. And what I've found is that the biggest thing that stops people from moving forward is overwhelm. Overwhelm, fear of making a mistake, fear of missing out, or not sure where to go, what to start with. And that causes procrastination and stagnation. That's what I've experienced in the last 10 years. When I've helped other people go and do it, that's what I've noticed to be something that is very common. Now, that's why we are excited to share with you our processes, because if you follow a process, step by step, move by move, kind of like a recipe, then if you follow it, like you put the right ingredients, you do the right process and method, and you get the outcome that you want, right? That's why we designed these processes that I'm going to share with you tonight. I want to also share with you, and this is what Dylan said. Dylan is my head coach and trainer, is a partner with me in the Kaizen way. And we're on this mission to help, empower people to get educated, kind of like what Terry does. Terry's out there to give people real information and data to be educated, because that is really critical to move and build a portfolio. That's why if you look at the ATO statistics, there's only like 90% of investors only own 1 or 2 properties, right? And there's a problem, is that there's this need of being informed. So we're on this mission to help empower and educate people. We're not buyer's agents. We're not real estate agents. We don't do anything like that. We don't sell properties. We coach and train people in what we actually do ourselves as investors. So we want to show you, Dylan's here to show you our tool that we have, which is only for our members, but we want to show you how we could give you an unfair advantage in finding deals like subdivision. We don't just do subdivisions, but we want to focus on subdivisions tonight. So we're going to show you that. And we're also going to be showing you some costs to be aware of when you're doing a subdivision. A lot of these sometimes, depending, like I saw some of you people here, not yet, you're planning to do a subdivision. That's amazing. You're going to really love this, because there's a lot of costs that you might not actually know about that will kill the deal if you don't allow for it. Okay. And we're also going to show you who you need on your team. And we're going to share just a real case study of right now. So it's real, it's right here, right now. And we're going to show you what those numbers are, so that you can get a high level understanding. Now, by the way, please make sure that, and be mindful that you might be, I don't know where you're from, which state you're in, but there are different costs that apply for different states, which is why I don't want you to take these costs as I saw this cost on this webinar at Terry and Brad, and I'm just going to put that in and I'll use those numbers. Please don't do that. We want to show you this to give you an example, so you've got some idea, but it's really going to have to come down to following a recipe, so that you can get the right costs, so you can get the understanding of the right numbers for your area, for your deal, for your state, so that it's going to be profitable. Okay, that's something that we like to do. That's why we're a little bit different. There's nothing wrong with the buy and hold strategy, by the way. The thing that we like to do is we like to accelerate the journey. We like to make sure that we can still maintain our serviceability and our equity levels whilst we fast track our portfolio. And the only way that I know how to do that is through doing something which is more active, not passive, which is what Terry was saying before. So let's get into it. In a nutshell, I'm going to share with you how subdivisions can be a safe and profitable way in today's market to make an extra $20,000, $60,000, $200,000 of equity or value, irrespective of whether the market rises or not. So it's always a cherry on the top, when you get the market that rises. But I've done my best deals in a sideways market where there's not as much heat, there's not as much people buying and going crazy, but there's still very good value and profit potential to manufacture that growth, that equity, that value by doing something to the property, i.e. subdivision. So let's get into this. So this training is going to be a little bit different, because it's not based on just theory, right? This is based on me being a successful investor first. So I haven't just gone and done a coaching, how to train and coach and start to share and help people. I've actually gone and been in the trenches. I've trained over 12,000 people across Australia, and I've personally mentored one-on-one over the last 10 years, 500 people. So I've looked at 500 people situations, 500 people scenarios, one-on-one intimately, and that's usually over a 12-month journey when I work with people one-on-one. And this is from the trenches, guys, from my practical experience. So that's why this is not just from a textbook. You can search all over the information age right now for how to do steps in that, but this is something that only is being able to be taught from experience. So please, what I want you to do right now is remove distractions. If you've got 50 tabs open right now, well, please make sure that you focus here, because this is one of the first key steps to success in property, especially with the way you do this, is you need to be able to hone in focus. You need to remove distractions. You need to remove the shiny objects and the like this or that. You need to come in, you need to hone in, you need to eliminate. Write this down. Deal finding is a process of elimination. Deal finding is a process of elimination. To find a profitable deal, you need to eliminate the rubbish and the lemons. And the way you go about doing that is following a recipe. Okay, so let's start getting in the deal finding process right now and get focused. Remove distractions. Okay, you ready? So the other thing I want to say, I spoke to Terry before I got on here, and I said that I wanted to offer something for you to be in here right now. Is if you stay to the end, I have something special to share with you on how we can help you. So, and it's something that is a special offer that I wanted to give for Terry's database and members. So stay tuned to the end, and I'll share what that is with you. Okay. So how to profit using subdivision. First of all, why subdivision? Why subdivision? Subdivision is what we call an accelerated growth strategy. Now, we have a model called the financial fortress model. And on one side of that model is all the growth strategies that we teach. And one of the accelerators is called accelerated growth strategies. And subdivision is an accelerated growth strategy, meaning you can grow your equity faster by being in the driver's seat. You are controlling the profit, okay? This strategy can be used to stage the deal. Now, what I mean by this, guys, is that if you're doing a development, now I've done townhouse developments, I've done subdivisions, and one of the things with the townhouse developments, if you're not doing a subdivision, let's just say you're doing a block of 6 or a block of 4 or a block of 10 or whatever it is, there isn't anywhere in that process that you have the ability to revalue, to release more equity, to continue on that strategy. You've got to go right to the end to title and finished and everything's done before you can access any of that equity in a townhouse development. With subdivision though, if you're wanting to do a subdivision and subdivide off a block or 2 and then build on the back or build a duplex on the back, you have an ability to get to stage 1, which is subdivision, then go back to the bank, revalue, and then get an increase in equity value, then use that equity value to then go to deposit to do the build, which is why I think subdivision is a very sexy strategy, because you have the ability to stage a development, and it's a very good way to keep it low risk. And if you don't have all the equity up front, as long as you work it all out before you get in there, you're able to actually replenish some of that as you go. So there's no other strategy that you can do with that. Okay, there's no other strategy. So generally, it's a great introduction to property development with fewer approvals to jump through, and it can be faster. So typically right now, what I'm seeing with my own deals and with my students' deals and Dylan's students, we're seeing that development is a 2-year plus timeline, all the way from site acquisition to titles, right? With councils and this and builders and tenders and finance, right? Now with subdivision, it depends, right? You could do a subdivision in and out within 12 months, sometimes 18 months, sometimes shorter, depending on the complexity of the development, right? So it's generally a quicker development on its own right than it is in any other of the development strategies. So let's go into the main styles of subdivision, okay? Now, what I mean by subdivision and what we mean here tonight is subdividing land, okay? We're not talking about subdividing buildings. Now, in some states, they call subdivision, they're actually talking about buildings, which we here in Queensland, if you're in Queensland, it's called strata titling, most likely, where you're splitting up the building into different titles under a community management scheme and a body corporate. What we're talking about here is what you call a Torrens title or its own title, right? Where we're cutting up the land and it's getting its own title. So that's what we're talking about here tonight with subdivision. And it can range from a very small one, which is what you call a splitter, which is you're getting a block of land, it's got the right frontage, and it may or may not have a house on it, and you can split it right up the middle. Now, if it does have a house, well, you need to be mindful of a few things there. Can you remove it? Number one, you might have what's called a demolition control protection protocol over it, or it might be over where you can see on my screen here that if you're going to do a subdivision there, if you've got the house right in the middle, you may need to shift it or move it. So again, you can't put a title through where the house is, okay? You got what's called a battle axe or a hatchet block. By the way, guys, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. I'll make sure I'll answer as many as I possibly can for you tonight. But the battle axe is where you may have a house already positioned over the side, and you can create a driveway to access and unlock the rear block. Okay, so that's what's called a battle axe, or it's often called a hatchet block. We also have things called widows or widow blocks. Now, this is where you might find that there's a property that already has 2 lots on the one title, but they're not necessarily done in a way that is conducive of a block of land that you can actually build on. It's kind of like they've done that, and this was back in the war times where they were doing this to make it a way that it wasn't being able to be sold. And these are the reason why they're called widow blocks is because of that. Now, if you see this when you're out there, and we're going to show you some things on our Kaizen Deal Finder Pro tonight, but if you see these types of things, it's not a deal breaker straight away, because you can do what's called a boundary realignment. Now, a boundary realignment is still a proper full subdivision application. So you'd have to still go to council, go get your development. We're going to talk about the process in a moment, but it's not just a simple, oh, I won't need council this. No, you're going to need to. As soon as you touch a boundary and you want to move a boundary, it's going to trigger getting an approval from council, okay? You've also got corner blocks. Love these ones. This is where you've got 2 street frontage. You've got the ability to use the frontages on both sides. There's a lot more opportunity with that, especially with stormwater and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in a moment, but that's another style you can do. The boundary alignment still also applies not only in the widow block, but also in properties that have already got another lot. And I've done many of these before where the boundary, there's 2 lots on one title, but the lot runs straight through the house. Now, I couldn't move the house, but all I needed to do was a boundary realignment and align the boundary around the house by doing a hatchet block. So the house was sitting here, the lot was running through there. So I just picked up the lot, realigned it to move it over like this, and I could carve off the front house and access the back block to be able to build on further or sell or whatever you want to do, right? And then there's the big ones that we call the large subdivision. Now, here's my recommendation. For those of you who have done a subdivision, some of you put in the chat here that you have, that's great, because if you've done a subdivision and you've got the experience, then that's where I believe you do your apprenticeship. Now, we're a big believer in doing your apprenticeship in the Kaizen way, even if it means not making as much profitability, but you're getting the lessons and learnings to be able to then roll into the next and the next and the next. Because this is not something that I think is you're just going to do once. Like this is a really lucrative opportunity to be able to really make great profits and cash and equity over and over and over again in markets that are sideways, in markets that are challenged. And especially right now when the supply demand equation is so much in our favor in terms of, as investors and developers, there's so much demand for properties, and being able to unlock further supply. This is something that is a really big opportunity right now and into the next, in foreseeable future, where 2, 3, 4, 5 years where we've got a lot of catch up to be able to meet the demand. Yeah, thanks for the questions that are coming in. I'll get back to them as we go through. If they're very specific questions to your personal situation, I'll do my best to give you enough to keep you going. But I just want to make sure I'm keeping it as relevant to everyone here right now on this session that's joining us. So don't worry, I've got you, Abdul. I'll come back to you in a second. So here's the process. Get ready for this, guys. This process here, we got a process called the PACE method. Now we'll go through that in a moment a little bit more, but this shows you here this flow chart of what it actually is. Now, P in PACE stands for prepare. This is the most important step in the journey that most people skip without education. okay? And here's what I mean. When you're preparing yourself, you're not rushing out there to realestate.com.au. You're not going out there to any buyer's agent. I'm not knocking any buyer's agents. I'm just saying you're not rushing out there first to say, hey, I want to do a subdivision. You're not going out and starting to entertain yourself on development websites. You're actually getting very prepared on what you'll need to be looking for by doing a little bit of due diligence first. But the first step is really about yourself and your position. So the first two steps is identification and definition. What this basically means is you're wanting to identify your risk factors, how far you're willing to travel to do a deal, you know, where you definitely don't want to go, you don't like mining or you don't like regional, you know. The definition phase is all about, well, what's my borrowing capacity? You know, what can I afford to buy, right? Based on my equity levels, my serviceability levels, you know, as you know, banks, they'll look at the 3 C's, which is your character, your capacity, and your collateral, right? So basically, when you understand that as step one, you're then armed to go with a little bit more focus on, well, I know I can afford this area, so let me now sort of start looking here, but I can't afford this, so I'm eliminating the noise, right? But this is the real important piece here right now, guys. Now, we can accelerate that clarity really fast for our members through identification and definition, through, we have, you know, processes and tools and templates for that. But this step here, guys, is the most important to be able to find a deal. Once you've got that clarity, it then goes into what we call deal recipes. And there's 2 stages. There's selection and evaluate. Now, selection is you got to select an LGA. You need to identify what LGA has got good fundamental economics. There's still good demand there, but there's also, you understand, especially with subdivision, you understand the zoning requirements, the town plan, and all those sort of things. Now, we'll show you that in a moment. But then you go from selection to evaluate. Now, this is important. You want to evaluate potential profitability before you spend too much time in that suburb. This is why successful deal finding is a process of elimination. Because if you go, oh man, there's definitely no possibilities whatsoever of profit potential here, then move, go, change, shift. Don't try and make it work, because you've got to keep going through a methodical way. And we want to stay at the suburb level here before we go too detailed and speaking to all the different agents to find us a deal. We don't even know if the deal works or not, right? So after evaluate, and we know there's profit potential, you go to what's called assess. Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate that. You go to what's called assess. Now, assess is where you start getting more detailed on the due diligence of that site. So think about prepare as, I'm just trying to find where there's profit potential to start with. And once we've got that, we know that, oh, there's profit potential in this suburb. I've already done the research in selection and evaluate. Now I'm going to find a site, and now I'm going to do the site-specific due diligence, because every subdivision site will be different. The slope, the sewer, the stormwater, the power, right? So this is where we start to get into deal-specific due diligence. And then we want to really make sure we've got good understanding of our financial outcomes, because then we're going to contract. We're going to tie this bad boy up, secure the site, get the finance, go to execute. Now, in execution of subdivision, what we want to do is get a DA application and approvals. There's a whole step in that, but this is just giving you the meta level so you understand the full process, right? There's a development application and a development approval that we're going to need, okay? Then we're going to go, this may or may not be applicable, but when you get a DA, you may not know this, when you get a development approval, you're then able to go and sell that off the plan. You hear about these off the plan properties, right? Buying off the plan in units and all these sort of things. Well, you can do that in your own subdivision. You can do a 1:3 or 4 lot or 1:2. And when you've got the DA, you can start marketing that back block and do an off the plan sale if you needed to. Now, you may or may not want to, but that's where you would start to do that. And then you really then start to go into what we call site works. Now, this is called different in different states: building permit, construction certificate, building application, operational works permit. Just know that it's site works, which means digging it up, putting the pipes in, getting the stuff done, right? Then we go, once we get the approval, we do the site works, then we go through titling and settlement, and then we review and document the lessons and wins. This is very important. Why? Because when you do your first subdivision, you're going to learn so much. It's going to be amazing. And you're going to be able to apply and leverage all those learnings to get an even better profit and even better and even better and keep learning as you go. My first subdivision I lost $28,000 and it took me 2.5 years. You don't want to be doing that, right? I'll share with you what happened and why. But what I learned from that, I could have given up and thought and said, this whole thing doesn't work. This is all crap. But I really learned about what I stuffed up. I completely stuffed up. I'm lucky I was almost about to swear then, but I'm keeping it real here. And it hurt, man. It really hurt. Can you imagine doing a deal and then 2.5 years later, you've gone backwards? And I know maybe some of you can relate to this, maybe not, but if you haven't done this yet and you're looking to do it, I'm glad you're here, okay? Because I'm going to help you avoid some of those big ones. And then you celebrate, right? Once you've got through it, you celebrate and you go again. This is the process. So let me give you an overview of what is something that we believe are the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats as subdivision as a strategy, okay? Just so you got a good idea. The ability to stage the deal, what I said before, this is a very big strength in subdivision. You can revalue part way through, or you can either partially sell down. You could revalue and keep going if you want to build on the back. There's options, which is great, right? It accelerates your equity position very, very fast, and it can be completed within 12 months. So these are the strengths with subdivision. The weaknesses is that you need to put a higher contingency cost required for all of the horizontals, right? Which is basically all of the works that you're doing underneath the ground. You can't see it, right? So most of the time you're wanting to apply a contingency of about 20 to 30% on all of the underground costs. Now I know that it's like, oh my God, that's huge. Well, hopefully you don't need to use it, right? But if you've still got a good enough margin with good contingencies in place, you're really making sure you're putting in this risk management, especially with this type of thing, right? Now, I'm not saying 20, 30% on the whole entire deal. I'm saying for the underground costs, because they're the ones that you can't really see. You can get some good, plans, and, you can get an understanding of where the services run and the depth, but you can't see rock, or you can't see, you can't see underground. So just please be mindful of that. Greenfield sites. So what I mean by greenfield sites are, they can be very expensive, but they're the sites that are yet to be getting all the infrastructure in place. You can buy raw, big pieces of land, out in the outskirts a little bit more. They're often called greenfield sites in the development world. Now, greenfield is basically can be very expensive, because what council usually like to do, because you're a developer, right? You've got like, you're just living it up on top of the mansion. You're the developer, man. You've got all this. That's what council think. And council like, oh, well, if you're going to be doing this out here, you want this approved. Well, you need to extend all our infrastructure out there. You need to put all the main stormwater, all the main sewer to service, not only yours, but all this whole area. So be very careful, because that can cost millions. What we like to do, and we're happy to do small little deals with big profits, less risk, and that's what's called infill development. Infill development is when there's already infrastructure there. You can already tap into existing infrastructure, and you're just creating you're just unlocking backyards, or you're unlocking other lots that you're able to do when it's already in an established area. That's very good profit with less risk. So greenfields, be mindful. Funding can require certain levels of profit margin for the development experience. What I mean by this, if you're going to be doing a subdivision and you're going to be doing a larger subdivision, so anything generally around 4 lots or more, you're going to have to get a minimum profit on cost, and write this down, a minimum profit on cost. So developer margin, like profit margin, which is your total profit as a percentage on your total cost. If that's less than 20%, then you may have challenges getting that funding approval, okay? But if you're wanting to do a 1:2 or a 1:3, sometimes 1:4, but let's just keep it 1:2 and 1:3, that is not, you don't need a margin to get the finance, right? Because that's called residential lending, and all you need is the serviceability and the equity to be able to do the deal. So you can still do a 15% margin deal, you can still do a 10% margin. That still could be $100,000, $200,000 that you make, right, in 12 months. Would that be okay? you know? So again, just be mindful that is a weakness with any developments. You might need to show a specific margin. The opportunities, infill sites, they can have more certainty of costs, the sales evidence, possibility to leverage costs after DA and fund the rest through development finance. So depending on size, what I really encourage everyone here, if you haven't done one before, is stick to a smaller size. Up to 3 lots, you know, is definitely doable. When I'm coaching someone or Dylan's coaching someone or someone's coming into our mastermind and they haven't done something before and they say, yeah, we want to do a 10 lot for our first one. We're like, okay, hold on a second. Let's do your apprenticeship, right? And we're very comfortable to do 3 lot, 4 lot subdivisions with people who have never done anything before if we're guiding them and holding their hand and showing them the way. So I really would recommend that. Think big, but start small, especially in the development space, right? Multiple exit points and options with subdivision, right? You can sell one, keep one. What I love about subdivision, and this is what really got me out of the rat race and what I was able to do to retire from full-time work, was by doing subdivision. And then I would subdivide, sell the existing, build a duplex at the back, reduce my debt levels, keep it. I'd have brand new property, good high depreciation, not that we rely on tax to make money, but good high depreciation, brand new property, good yields. But I would have in a good area with far less LVR, far less lending on it, because I've liquidated some of the debt by selling off some. Does that make sense? So when you do that and you can replicate that over and over and over again, what happens is that when you start doing this, you could do it once, great. You do it again, great. Then you can do 2 at a time. Then you can do 3 at a time. Then you can do 4 at a time if this is what you want. Then you're really compounding your results. And that's basically what I did. Subdivide, do a small little cosmetic reno, sell the front off, build a new duplex or even a house with a granny flat at the back, keep it, which I still have today in my portfolio, keep them, rent them out, and you've got a lower debt level. You can go again, you've got your equity back, and you can keep going, right? The threats are delays from supply and labor market that everyone knows as a constraint. So you really need to know and understand your lead times with these sort of things and plan that in and allow for that time in your feasibility, because time is money, right? Time is money. Delays from councils or authorities, that's a real thing. That's what I'm saying. You know, these timelines that I've given you tonight, they're real. They can take longer. So you've got to allow, you're not going to be able to get in and out in 4 months. You know, I've only ever done that once, but that was on a subdivision that had already been subdivided and someone didn't know, and I just bought it and I was able to do what's called lift the title, right? Funding and financing can be a little bit tricky here as well. And also if you're doing a subdivision, like a 1 into 2 or 3, you need to have enough equity, cash available to buy the deal and do the subdivision. So you can't necessarily fund the subdivision costs from the banks if you're doing a subdivision which is not in your development commercial finance, where I'm looking at lots 1 into 2, 1 into 3s, up to 1 into 4s as a stretch. You're going to need to have enough cash available to be able to spend your money on the professional fees, the site costs, the whole thing. That's the other thing you've got to be mindful of. So here are the biggest dangers. Please take a photo of this, or you can watch the recording of this. This is something that happened to me on my first deal. This is how I lost money on my first deal. Point number 1, if your property is sloping towards the back, and even if it says, oh, you can subdivide this and make all this money, I'm not saying run. I'm just saying be very mindful of the cost to be able to demonstrate to council on how you can get the stormwater to what's called a legal point of discharge, okay? A legal point of discharge, that's something you really want to know on that site. Now, sometimes it can be at the back. If your property is sloping towards the back and there's some sort of gully system or that council deems to be a legal point of discharge, okay, that's fine. But that's not as common. Otherwise, you're going to have to, like if you've got a property that's sloping towards the back and you've got a property behind you, they're not going to be happy for stormwater to be running through that property behind you. So you're going to have to either demonstrate how, with a lot of engineering and cost, you're going to get that back to the legal point of discharge at the frontage of your property, or you need to go and knock on that neighbor's door and get them to agree to put an easement through their property, affecting their property and potentially their value and their usability, so that you can allow stormwater to run through their property, right? So just be very mindful of that. If it slopes, just double check and question that deal and make sure you can get to legal point of discharge. If there is sewer running through the middle of the block, it's going to be expensive because most councils, some will let you, but most councils, when you do a subdivision, they're going to want you to run it at least 1.5 meters around the fence line and boundary line. So you're moving all the sewer away from the building area. Now you can do build over sewer and those sort of things, but it's expensive and not every council allow you to do that. So if your sewer's running all through here, it's going to be expensive. Again, I'm just speaking from experience. I did do that. I had sewer running through. I had the slope towards the back. It was no good. I was so excited. I was like, oh, yes, I got a subdivision site because I've got enough square meterage. Let's go. I bought it. Let's do it. And I come into all of these mistakes. Be careful of demolition control. So be aware if you're expecting to demo, you just need to check this off, guys. It's just a checkpoint because I've heard of people buying a subdivision, they're expecting to demolish it, but they're not allowed to, and then all of a sudden they can't do what they want to do on the site, so they're stuck. Council fees and charges. You must understand what these are in your state. I'm going to go through those in a minute on what those costs are, but you've got to be very careful in your area, in your state. Services and connections. So that's not just the location, but the capacity. And don't worry, guys, I'm not trying to sort of say, I'm not trying to teach you how to be a town planner or civil engineer on this session. What I'm going to show you is the big things that you need to be aware of, but then who you need to speak to and what you need to ask and how you can start to go and approach these things. You know, that's the best I can do in the time that we have right here tonight for you, so that you at least understand. I didn't even know about these things. Oh yeah, you can subdivide. Great. I didn't even know about like, oh man, you know, where are the services? So what I mean by services, sewer, and write these down: sewer, water, stormwater, power. They're the main big needle mover, big cost items that if there's big challenges with them, it's going to cost you big money, right? Again, speaking from experience, I had, you know, power issues. So there was power available, but by me subdividing, it actually created a too much capacity over the transformer, which means I had to pay to completely change the transformer, which was $32,000 just on the transformer alone. Otherwise, the power authority weren't going to give me the supply certificate to allow me to subdivide because I didn't have the capacity from a power point of view to give power to that block. Does that make sense? So all of these things, guys, are important for you to assess before you go unconditional, so that you actually know that, okay, I'm avoiding the big mistakes here that Brad's made. Subject to council approval and as suggesting make big profit by subdividing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. The only reason why you should is because the numbers tell you to. That's the only reason why. The data says, yep, this is going to make profit. The other thing you want to be mindful of is a thing called overlays. Now, again, we're not going to try and turn you into town planners here. What overlays are something that will restrict development depending on what that is. It could be bushfire, it could be flooding, it could be koala habitat, whatever that might be. So let me show you how we find profitable subdivision deals. Let me just dump this out. The first thing is don't rush out there to realestate.com. Start, you know, don't start looking at properties without having done that first, remember the prepare stage, selection, evaluation. You're going to waste your time. Don't listen to gurus or experts who don't have any experience and say, here you go, you can subdivide this, you're going to make all this money. I've seen so many of those come across my desk from our members and our students, and we teach them to do a quick review on that, and there's no profit in it because there's all these fees that are missing and all these council charges that are missing and all these, you know, so be careful about that as well. And getting overwhelmed with information is something that we don't do. So instead, we use specialized knowledge, a proven process, and the right tools, okay? Specialized knowledge, as an example here are the 5 things that you really need to understand. Zoning. Now, we're not trying to turn you into, again, a town planning expert who knows every inch of the planning scheme. You do need to understand these at a high level, though, and there's ways to do it. We've got two different ways we do it. One, Dylan's going to show you on our tool. Another way, if that's not available, is that we have a way in which we teach our students what to say and call scripts and everything like that to be able to get information that you need in your LGA, in your suburb, that you're looking at in your price point, okay? So there, as you can see, there's zoning, minimum land size and frontage requirements. They're going to be different depending on whether they're battle axe or splitters or corner blocks. The legal point of discharge, already said that's very important, that you want to understand that. Additional planning control, so that's like your overlays and things like that. And then approval process. So what are the approval process steps? How long does it typically take so that you can put that in your feasibility so you've got the time and cost covered, okay? So that's something that will take, like, we can't possibly do that in 60 minutes. But this is something that is not difficult once you know who to speak to or where to go to look for it, okay, guys? This is something that is not that difficult once you've got a recipe to follow, okay? So our proven processes, that's specialized knowledge. Our proven processes, we've already spoke about the PACE method, but I want to pay particular attention to this here. This is where you will find the deals. This is where you get to understand where you are, what you can borrow, what you need for your portfolio. And this is where you're going to be actually find the deals. So the deal recipes is the most important step in our process to find profitable deals, whether it's subdivision, townhouse developments, rooming houses, whatever else we're teaching. There's a recipe. Now, what is a recipe? A recipe follows the same principles. You need a process, you need a method, and you need the right ingredients. So we created our own recipes. And what I want to do with you, show you right now is very quickly, I'm going to show you this and I'm going to hand it over to Dylan to show you how we go about doing that in our own software that we've worked with developers to create to help with our strategies like subdivision, development, etc. So I'm going to dump these out. Basically, if you think about a funnel, you fill in the top of the funnel with as much information, and as you go down the funnel, you get more and more narrowed and focused. Now, at each one of these steps, you may have to kick out and go back up, but these are the stages that we have designed and we teach our members to go and find profitable deals. You start with the LGA, which is really about knowing your price points and what you can afford. You then go and do your strategy research, which is knowing in that area, what's the zone, what's the frontage, what's the minimum lot size, etc. You then go down to evaluation, which is really about, well, does this have profit potential? If it does, yes, we've looked at the comparable sales, we've looked at the costs, we've done it at high level feasibility. If it ticks that box and goes, yes, there's enough profit potential, only then we move further down and we become an expert. We know street level. We know everything about that suburb. And then we get to what's called an acquisition information memorandum, which is basically the ingredients. We know what price point to pay, what streets are good, what we need to be able to sell it for, what costs we're able to allow for to know that we're going to be making money. And then we go to real estate agents. Then we start looking for properties. Then we start, going on and off market strategies. Okay. So we believe that the right tools also help. So we've got three main tools I want to share with you tonight. Kaizen Deal Finder Pro, AAT, which is called Acquisition Acceleration Tool. This is a tool here, as you can see here. You probably can't see it too well, but down the bottom, there's all these tabs. And this takes you through step by step. We teach, here's the step you need to do. You go and do, you fill this out, and it gathers all the information as you go through the process to find your deal. This is a feasibility template that we give our members. It's done for them, that all the calculations are done. They've just got to get all the inputs, which we teach how to do. And that's another very important tool where you're able to do sensitivity analysis. You're able to prove the profit before you purchase. Very important principle. So let me know in the chat. If you want to see a bit of Kaizen Deal Finder Pro action where we can show you how to go through that funnel. Just put yes in the chat if you want to see some Kaizen Deal Finder Pro, our software tool that helps you to find deals faster and easier without the need to go to all these other websites. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hand it over to Dylan, and he will share his screen, and he will show you basically this tool we've been working on for about 18 months.
All right. How you guys doing? Thank you for that, Brad. I'm just going to shift a couple of things to the side. Awesome to be here today to share a little bit about Kaizen Deal Finder Pro. It's been our mission to create software that's a one-stop shop and for developers. So there's plenty of software out there that gives property data. What we wanted to create was software out there that supports property development and puts all the information in your hands. Now, what the process that Brad just took you through then was a whole process of not going to realestate.com, not contacting agents and saying what's on the market. It was about looking at what works, the strategy research, the area selection, suburb evaluation. Now, we do all this work and get to a deal recipe before we even start looking for a site, because there's a lot of sites out there that don't work. So we want to be able to eliminate suburbs and sites that don't work quickly. And that's our intention with Kaizen Deal Finder Pro. So let me just take you through a high level of what we got in here. Now, in Kaizen Deal Finder Pro, but what we talked about in the first step of the acquisition acceleration funnel was area selection. So you've got to decide on an area. Now, for example, I could say I live in Brisbane and I want to select around that area, but I might want to understand, well, in terms of the things what would be the things that I could look at that I might be interested in. Now, the truth is, for a subdivision deal, you can make them work in any market. So for me, the key thing that I will be looking for is, what's my price points? Now, we teach our students how to calculate what they can afford to buy. But for example, I just want to show you, I can zoom in and out. We have heat maps here that show suburb by suburb what the median price is. So I can look at all these things, and I might have, let's say I've got a price point of around $900,000. So I can look and think, well, these suburbs in here, they are a little bit too expensive. Like, I'm not going to probably do something in Kedron. It's almost $1.2 million. But Aspley, that looks like it might be in my price point. So straight away, I'm pointing to a suburb that's in my price point rather than looking at somewhere where I can't afford, right? So let's actually unpack that a little bit more now. And I might just want to actually understand a little bit around. Let's just have a close look at Aspley now. So now you can see this is Aspley. There's the green outline here. We have some key metrics here. And we also love to understand the data that supports what are the trends in the suburbs. So you can see we've got some high-level information here around the suburb statistic, what the suburb median price is. And we have a number of different trends of your friends in property that we could go through here. Now, the truth is, subdivision can work in any of these markets. This is just fundamentals to understand, are we buying in a good area? And this might be the cream on top. So we can research the suburb. Now, that's an important thing. But for subdivisions, what I really want to understand, and very quickly, it's no use if I'm researching this suburb and there's no properties that I can subdivide in this suburb. So the first thing I want to understand is, well, is there stock availability? Is there actually properties in this suburb that I can subdivide? Now, this is where we apply that specialised knowledge. So if we have some knowledge around that, what Brad talked about before with zoning, overlays, minimum lot sizes. So for example, in here, you might understand now that you've got to develop in low density residential subdivision, and you may need a minimum lot size of 800 metres. Now, that is actually the case for Brisbane City Council. That's not the case everywhere. I'm using this as an example, and we might need minimum frontage of 20. This is just an example, but what I'm going to do now is search, and all of a sudden you can see here is all the dots that are coming up. So these yellow dots mean that these properties are more than likely able to be subdivided. So I can actually see that there is a fairly decent stock availability in here. So if there was no yellow dots, that would be something for me to eliminate this suburb and move to the next one. Now, the other things I just want to point out while I'm at this level is looking at the overlays. So some of the key overlays, flooding can cause issues. Not a showstopper, but you want to understand it. Could be a reason. So we can look at those things in here. We might want to, Brad talked about demolition control. So these are areas where there might be a challenge in demolishing those properties. There is things like biodiversity, which is, the trees. If you've got a site in this area, there might be a struggle to clear the trees. So we have some information like that. So that's a key thing about, is there stock in the suburb? We also, so I might just turn that one off for a little while. We also might want to understand, what is actually on the market right now? If I'm to look at those strategies, let's just see what's on the market right now. So I can see in this suburb at the moment, there are 6 properties on the market right now. They're ranging in price, and I'd have to go and research them, but that just gives me an understanding that there is actually properties there now. I'm going to need to go through them in more detail, but let's just click on one as a general rule in here. I just want to show you some stuff that we have. So already once we get into these areas, we actually have some planning information in here. We can see the number of lots. We can see the frontage of the area. We can see that there's actually a number of projects around the area. So we start to look through that. So that's just giving us some information in terms of the actual property itself, but I'm still only at the research stage. So what might be more interesting at this stage is this strategy, subdivisions, actually happening in this suburb? So I know it can happen, but is it actually happening in this suburb? And that's where I would be looking through actually I could look in here first. So in here, I actually have some information around the subdivision potential, the minimum lot size, the minimum frontage. So there's some more information that I can use, but I want to understand, Brad talked about this before, if you're going to subdivide, you need to put in a development application, a planning permit, depending on what state you're in. So what we can do here now, and we're just going to do this for the suburb of Aspley, and we'll look at the last 24 months, last 2 years, is let's just search through, and if I zoom out, all these blue dots, they are actually development applications. Now, they're development applications for multiple things. Now, in this chosen council, reconfiguration or reconfigure is a keyword that means subdivision. So I'm just going to type in recon because there's a few different variations of it and hit search there. And now I actually have all the sites that have actually had a subdivision in them. Now I could choose to click on one of these and see the development details. Now that's going to open up a development application for me. So I actually opened up one a little bit earlier and I got all the way through to looking at a plan. So this is straight from within Kaizen Deal Finder Pro. I am now looking at a subdivision in a site. I can actually see that who was the surveyor on the site, who was the civil engineer on the site, and there'll be other plans in there. I can see who the town planner was on the site. Now that's links to individuals, and it's also showing me it's done. And this is an awesome source of information to reverse engineer to establish what does it cost to do a subdivision as well. So this is really putting information in your hands. So that's a little bit about the development application process. Now, when you're looking for a subdivision and it all comes down to the numbers, there's the can I and the should I. The should I is the numbers. So the key thing when you're assessing any sites is what does it cost me? Now that's what can I buy the site for? What are the strategy costs and how long does it take? So let's look at that in Kaizen Deal Finder Pro. If we were to look at, and I'm only going to do this at a high level, but let's understand what does it cost. Now, if we might want to look at the suburb, we might be looking at things for a minimum lot size of, there we are, 800 metres. Because you want to understand, well, what's it going to cost to buy a site that's subdividable? So here's a snapshot, here's a summary. So of the sites that was subdividable, here's all the information of them. 34 sites in the last 12 months were subdividable. Now we've got information there. We'd have to go through it. I could look through the search comparables analysis and download and say this one's applicable, this one's not. And there'll be a range of ones that are and are not. But that's the information. So that's what can I sell, what can I buy the site for? The other side is what can I sell it for, or what is it worth at the end? So that's the income side of the equation. Now, on that side of the thing, we also would be looking in here, but instead of looking through a house, we would be looking through, well, what's the land? Now, you could be choosing to build on it afterwards, in which case you would be looking at the next stage, but let's just keep straight with subdivision. I might push this out to 2 years, and let's just see now in this area, expand the search, and we're going to hit and close that down. We don't need the minimum lots in there because it's going to be smaller. So now we've brought up some sites, so I can start to get some data around, okay, and I could go through and research this and understand, okay, I can sell this lot for this. These size lots are going to go for $560,000. I can start to put that with location. I can see where they're selling. Are they on a main road? Is it in a good street? All those things. So that is really the other side of the equation. And once you've got what can I buy a site for? What are the costs of that strategy? How long will it take and what can I sell it for? then that's all the important ingredients you need for a feasibility. And that's what we've been able to get from this in here. The other side of the equation that I did wanted to quickly show in here was a couple of examples. So here is a few lots that came up that had yellow dots on them in the past. So I only looked at this just before we jumped on the webinar. There was a few dots. So here is a site here that that's an 800-meter site. We would be able to subdivide that into 2 sites. Now, we would have to look at things like, if we're looking at this site and we were actually at the acquisition stage, we want to understand, okay, what does the contours go? It's sloping away from the street. So that might be a reason why we don't go to that one. On this side, where it is sloping towards the street, there's another example. That is a reason why we might actually look at that one. I created another little one just here. Here's an example of a corner lot. So leave the house there and create a vacant lot beside it. So these are all the things you can do. Once you've got that and you've got your strategy recipe, then within this, you can actually start tagging these properties. And in here, we've got a pipeline where we can email these out. You can send letters directly out to owners. We've got on-market strategies. We've got off-market strategies. The key thing is doing the research first and understanding what the recipe is to make a profitable subdivision before you start looking for those sites. So that's it in a nutshell, guys. I'll hand it back to you, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. By the way, guys, we've just got a few minutes left. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go as fast as I can. If we go over about by 5 minutes in terms of my content, would that be okay? Just put in the chat if that's okay, and then we'll just open it up for questions. Yeah. All right, cool. I'll just go through this because I promised that I want to show you a case study. Cool, thank you. And then we'll just wrap this up. So I'm just going to share my screen, which is over here, and then we'll wrap it up, guys. Thank you for your engagement and attention so far. And thank you, Dylan, for showing that. Obviously, that was a very fast tip of the iceberg. It goes very deep, but we just want to get you a sense of like there's an all-in-one tool that we have built to do these types of deals, to help find them and get the information. So this is a real deal here right now as it stands. It's a corner block. One of our members is doing this right now. And the reason why I've got this up, and by the way, please write this down before you dig. It used to be called dial before you dig, but right before you dig. Now that's something that you want to get access to. You put the address in and then you get the sewage diagram, you get the water diagram, you get the stormwater, you get the gas, you get the NBN, right? Now the reason why, this is not a very good picture here, but this is the reason why I want to show you this. The blue is the water and the red is the sewage, right? Now this is his block here. Now, unfortunately, there was something here in this block that he had to get a new water from across the road, right? Now, this is why when I show you this, it's not as profitable, but it's still profitable. So there's the high level numbers to show you. You're welcome to take a photo of this if you want, but this is a real example right now of a subdivision, right? Now, as you can see down the bottom, I said before that when you're doing a big development, you want to get a 20% profit on cost, otherwise the banks won't fund it, but also there's a lot of wriggle room. The bigger the development, the bigger the risk, right? There's more market risk, there's more execution risk, there's more finance risk, there's a lot more risk involved. With this one, I wanted to show you this because it's real. There are challenges with sites, but this guy is still making $122,000 profit by doing a subdivision, which is an apprenticeship deal for him. Now, my question to you would be, would that be okay for your apprenticeship deal, your first one, to get in to make $122,000 within 12 months on a subdivision, but it's what you learn. He'll get better and better and better at this, but I want to show you some of these figures here. So this is one thing here. This is when you see authority fees, you've got to be very mindful of what's called council contribution fees. This could be huge or it could be small, depending on the state you're in, right? So this is something that I want you to be mindful of when you're doing a subdivision, is you understand the council fees and charges and you understand these things here. So be mindful of these costs. Council contributions can be $2,000 or it could be $32,000. Think about that for a second. Now, don't get me started on what I believe is needed to help with the supply side of the equation, which I think is just letting go of the red tape and giving developers a little bit of leeway here. But that would be a good start to limit some of these things to allow us to get more stock out there. It would be a very good way to do that. But anyway, I'll keep that for another conversation. But be mindful of this. It could kill the deal. Okay. Now, if you're wanting to do a 1-into-3 lot subdivision, you're adding 2 extra lots, which is 2 times the contribution fees. So if you're in Queensland, it's $32,000. That is $64,000 in fees just to do a 1 into 3 lot subdivision. Okay. So be mindful of sewer. Where is it running? Water, stormwater, power, and demolition. When it comes to costs, please make sure you remember these guys. Please make sure you ask questions around these. Now, if you're not sure who, here's who you need. On your A team, you need a town planner. Now, Dylan showed you in Kaizen Deal Finder Pro and going through and understanding the plans, you can get the town planner who worked on a subdivision in your area. You can call them and say, hey, I noticed you worked on such and such street. What was your fees? What was the challenges? How long did it take? Civil engineer is your best friend. A town planner can help you with, can you do the subdivision with the zoning, with the frontage and all that? A civil engineer is most likely helping you with, should you do it, with the costs. They can help you. Well, it's going to cost you about this. It's going to cost you about that with the sewer, the stormwater, right? The driveways, the crossovers. Surveyor is, again, someone who's going to be absolutely critical in your team, and getting a coach or mentor. If you've never done one, it'll save you time and money and headaches, and that is important. So we don't just help people with subdivisions. We help people with developments as well. So small lot developments. We help people with accelerated income. So this is an income strategy. This is in Brisbane. So again, it's not out whoop, whoop. We help people with accelerated growth, with renovations, development, knockdown, rebuilds. So just showing you some examples really quickly because we're out of time. But we've been doing this now. I've been coaching and training people for about 10 years. And so we've seen a lot of different scenarios. And what I'll say is that it doesn't matter where you're starting from. As long as you're hungry and you've got a desire to move forward, you can start moving forward, even if you have to implement our no money down strategies, okay, using development. Here's Vicky. She's done this is a duplex build, strata titles. She sold one, kept one. This is in a very good area where she's got $23,000 passive income coming from a property because she partially liquidated the strategy as well. Here's just a simple renovation that Malcolm did within 12 months, made $60,000. Our message and take-home message, and this is the end of the session here, is take control of your financial future and be in the driver's seat, which means start manufacturing and getting like control of your financial and not relying on anyone else or the market or anything. You can take control of this. So if they can do it, you can too. We have a membership called Property Mastery Academy. I'm not going to go through it right now, but here's what I'll say. If you're interested to find out more, all you need to do is go to this link, you put your name and email and phone number, and we will get on a call. And here's what we're going to do on the call. I'm just going to find out more about your situation, if we're the right fit together, and if we can actually help you. And if the answer is yes to that, and we show you what we can do, then we'll be happy to work with you and help you on your journey. But there's one thing I want to mention, and this is what I said, stay to the end, and that is that because you're here and because you've come through Terry, and I've spoken to Terry about this, we're going to offer in a bonus worth $3,995, which is a ticket to a live event, which we teach how to replace your income and income strategies. And we're also going to be offering a special price for our memberships for the first 5 people that do come on board. So please click on that link if you're interested, just for a chat to find out how we can implement some of these strategies in your situation to move you forward. And if you've got any questions, please let us know. But Terry, thanks for having us. And guys, thanks for listening.
And thank you, Brad. I'm happy to stick around if people have questions. If you're happy to stay 5 or 10 minutes longer so people can type their questions either into the Q&A panel or the chat box. And just reminding you that that link that Brad was talking about is there in the chat box as well. Just click on that to take you through to the special offer.
So I've got a couple of questions in here. Just in the Q&A chat, I'll just mention it out. So can you subdivide and sell without building as a good strategy? Absolutely, you can. You just got to make sure the numbers work. You can subdivide. You don't have to build. You can sell the front land. You can pay down the debt in the house that you've kept. And if you want, there's people, our students are doing that as well. As long as the numbers work, that's the most important thing. There was a question by Abdul. I'm just going to go back and answer that where it was. Unfortunately, Dylan, that went to your answer. Your response went to hosts and panels only, but that's okay. We don't have access to message. So Abdul, basically your question is, you got a property that's got 376 square meters. You're wanting to know if you could subdivide. The best thing you can do is, depending on which state you're in, you want to try and get a town planner who's worked in that area, who's done subdivisions before, and you want to get in touch with them. And you may need to spend a smaller bit of money to find out, or depending on if they're friendly enough to give you some quick information, a preliminary investigation, you give them the address. And if you start with them, you'll be able to know what you can do. And then if you can, then you need to go and understand the costs to whether or not if you should do it. So my first thing for you to do would be, please go and see a town planner. That'd be a great place to start for you in your area. Find one that's done subdivisions, that they know what they're doing, and get in contact with them and give them a call and let them know you've got a property that you're thinking about subdividing. Would you subdivide before or after gaining a planning permit? So great question, Wilson. Thank you. I think I understand what you're saying here, but you basically, to be able to subdivide a property, well, there's two ways. One way of which we showed you tonight, which is the land subdivision, and you must get a development application approved. Then you must go through the next level of approvals, which is kind of like your site works approvals. Then you need to make sure all the authorities need to understand what you're doing and how you're going to connect in. So depending on your state and where that might be, so the water and the sewer providers. And then once you get approval and everyone understands what you're doing, you then go and do the subdivision. All right, you've got your pre-start meeting, your council know what you're doing, you've got the approvals in your hand, you've got the contractors engaged, and you're doing the dig in the dirt, okay? So you basically subdivide after the DA. Now, this is something a little bit extra for you guys. If you're in an area that you don't meet the minimum lot size, if you build and you've got a property that you've already got two properties on it, it's called dual occupancy, and you build first, and you've checked this with the town planner, so you've got the DA to build, then you go back and subdivide after, which usually can help you get a smaller minimum lot size because you're going through what's called a dual occupancy approval, not a subdivision approval to start with. So if that's what you're asking, you can go down that way, but you still need a DA to get the dual occupancy, and you need to build it first. Yeah, I hope that helps. Did that answer your question, Wilson? I got another question here. For unit sites, do we have to arrange drainage and driveways? So for unit sites, if you're talking about you wanting to do a unit development, absolutely you need to get all of that, basically your operational works, you'll need the civil engineer with you to do stormwater plan, driveway plans, all that sort of stuff. If you're saying that you've got a block of units that you want to subdivide a piece of land off, again, yes, you still need to make sure that you get a council approval to be able to subdivide, which they'll ask you for. How are you dealing? You think about it. They're going to want to know, how are you dealing? If you're going to create a block here, how are you dealing with the stormwater? Demonstrate to us how you're going to connect to services, water, sewer, phone, power. If you can show us that and you meet all our requirements, go for it, sort of thing. Yeah, so I hope that helped, Russell. Thanks, Russell. Appreciate it, man. Any other questions, let us know.
I've got a question for you, Brad. One of the things we talked about in the lead up to this webinar was that you thought it was a really good, what you call a hands-off investment. Just how realistic is it to undertake a small subdivision? I'm in Queensland, and if want to do something with a property I own in, say, Victoria, at that distance?
Great question, Terry. We find that subdivision is one of the better hands-off. Now, when we say hands-off, it means that you're not picking up a hammer, a paintbrush, you're not sanding, you're not putting tiles on. And if you understand the process and you understand who you need to speak to on your team. So Terry, I've done subdivisions all over Australia, and it's one of the easiest ones to do from afar. I'm not saying you never go to the site. I always like to go, before I go unconditional, I always like to see the site. I'll never go and buy a site unseen, but you don't necessarily need to be there all the time. If you've got a good civil engineer on board who will also project manage the whole thing for you from end to end, especially on a small scale one, all you need to do is manage people and manage process. And if you can do that, you can do it from any state.
That subdivision that we shared the example at the end is actually an interstate deal. So the person is in another state to where that subdivision happened. I think he's been there about 3 times.
Yeah, so he's from New South Wales, and he's smart. He's investing in Queensland. Oh my God, I didn't say that, but anyway. But yeah, he's and look, we've got students all over Australia, and they're doing subdivisions all over. So we've got people in WA, people in Victoria, people in New South Wales. Actually, no one in. Oh no, we got one in Northern Territory in Darwin, and yeah, in Queensland. So it's a strategy that we love because it's like Terry said, it's kind of like hands off, as in you've got a lot of professionals who know a lot of great things, who've gone to university and very smart and intelligent, that are able to help you with the whole process. As long as you know the process and you know who to engage, they can help you with it. That's the beautiful thing.
Okay. Not a bad note to end on. Just to remind people, if you want to connect with Brad, click on the link that's still there just for a few moments longer in the chat box. But thanks, Brad and Dylan, for a wonderfully informative and interesting presentation. Now, you spoke in the beginning about the importance of having a recipe, and you certainly gave us one. You talked about subdividing warts and all. You talked about the dangers and the costs and the mistakes that you have made personally along the way, but you also gave us methodology, such as the acquisition acceleration funnel, and some tools like your wonderful Kaizen Deal Finder Pro. And I commend you for developing such a fantastic AI tool that I imagine is probably unique in Australia. Wonderful tool for helping people find opportunities if they're interested in this kind of development or other forms of development as well. And I think the final message that I'll take, one of the takeaways that I'll take with me is just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Thanks,
Very
Terry.
good. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Brad. Let's do it again a little bit later in the year. I'm sure we'll have a very willing and receptive audience.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Terry. Appreciate everyone
Thanks,
for tonight.
guys.
I hope you got a lot of value out of it. Take care. Hope to speak to you soon.
Okay, thanks everyone for participating. Bye for now.